Well, a few weeks ago, I had Wayne Carter, the former district attorney of Bradley County here. And it was a good episode. A lot of people watched it. But I just felt like maybe I hadn't gotten down to to maybe more of his journey.
I've looked forward to this. The last one I was a little nervous because I didn't know you.
Yeah, we'd never met.
I told everybody, I said, it was just the most comfortable discussion. I looked up and we were done and we went for an hour and a half.
It's like warp speed in here.
Yeah.
It's literally like 20 minutes.
Well, I think you are good at this.
Well, according to my critics, I stumble on words and say sometimes, but you do that if you're eating lunch with somebody.
But that's natural.
It's just natural.
It's just natural.
Production kills authenticity.
Yeah.
Whenever you read a story in the newspaper or see something on television about somebody getting arrested, you naturally assume they're guilty. Unless the story's about you or someone you love, then you'll think differently. And you'll want a lawyer who will defend you. My name's Scott Canavis. If you or someone you love has been charged with a crime, call me. I'll return your phone calls, I'll work on your case, and I will defend you.
Yeah.
But when you came in, we were talking about what was important.
And we were just kind of mentioning, and I'll start our conversation by just saying what I say is me, and it may not apply to you. Like my experiences in religion, spiritual stuff. It's me, and it may not apply to you. You may have a different experience, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. That's different. But the important thing, what we were talking about, I think, is that you being a successful contractor, me being a successful attorney, having a lot of money, all this stuff is nothing wrong with that. It's all good stuff.
It's good stuff.
But none of that stuff lasts forever. And so the most important thing, I think, is, and I think for my children and my grandchildren, is do they have a spiritual life? And how is that introduced to them? And if I don't introduce it to them, who will?
And if somebody says, if we lived in a foreign country, that foreign country person might say, "Oh, I teach my kids to throw a spear or skin hogs or whatever they do, or if you're in Russia or somewhere else, you teach them this or that." Well, our family and us, we don't teach that. That doesn't make us bad people. It's just there's different ways to teach people. Maybe it's not necessarily just culture, but with you, importance is teaching them to seek God.
Yeah, I think you remember Hank Williams Jr.
Oh, do I?
He had a song I loved, "Country Boy Can Survive."
Yeah.
And in that song, he talked about he had a friend in New York City.
Yeah.
And I don't remember exactly how it went, but his dad taught him how to be a businessman. Yeah. And he says, and my dad taught me how to live off the land.
Well, it's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
Boy, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Neither father was bad.
Right. Yeah.
That was a good song.
It was a good song.
Yeah.
I like that.
So, I think that's what we're saying. But, or is it? My grandmother said, and maybe she said it differently. She said, "This legacy of mine." if that, what kind of legacy did I leave my child or a grandchild if they're doing this good or doing that good? Maybe that's my legacy.
When I pastored the church up in the mountains, one of my best friends up there got to be one of my best friends was the Church of God of Prophecy pastor, a guy named Richard Morrow, pastored the Fields of the Woods Church of God. I don't know if you're familiar with Fields of the Woods, but it was right across the street from that area. And he and I just got to be buddies. And I never forget, he and I did a funeral together one time, and his sermon was talked about between the dashes. Dash the day you were born to the day you died, and what do people remember? And that, what you said is exactly what.
Yeah, because born in here, died there.
Yeah.
What's the between?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see how maybe it's like on that Hank Williams song. Maybe it's not that his dad taught him that and his dad taught him that, but that they taught them something.
Well, one of the neatest things that I learned, and we're getting kind of, I don't know what you were planning on talking
I had
about this.
no subject.
But one of the things that I learned when I was up there pastoring is that the denominations weren't that big a deal up there. It was great. I had like I said, Richard Morrow, he was the pastor of the Church of God of Prophecy. It was a guy named Barry, and I can't remember Barry's last name, was the pastor of the Church of God. And this fella, I think his name was Johnson, but he was the Methodist guy. And we got where we would get together every Saturday morning and pray with each other, pray for our services the next day in the various churches, pray for our congregation, and just the camaraderie. And it didn't matter that I was Presbyterian and they were whatever. It was just they were good guys, and I just really loved those guys. I had a great experience.
When you were here last time, we touched on all of that, but I don't feel like I got into the real your journey as much as maybe I wanted to. Do you feel like that what you were taught as a child maybe lingered on more than you realized?
Oh, critical. In our church this morning, we have a small congregation. We have probably 135, 140 members. We have probably 15 or 20 children. And then we'll have that many more teenagers. It's a pretty good percentage. Yeah. But this morning, our and I got to give her a lot of credit. There's a young lady by the name of Jessica Gomez. Do you remember Joe Spencer?
No.
He was the coach at here at Ocoee Middle forever, a girl's band. Anyway, he's been his daughters. He's our Christian education person. And she came up with this idea this morning of giving all of our children a Bible. But it's one of these Bibles that's got the illustrations and stuff, And I thought, that's just good. I'm so proud of her for coming up with doing that. Because what I learned as a child absolutely stuck with me. And I think about those poor teachers that had to teach little Wayne. I was probably a hellion. I probably was. And but took the time to teach me those stories. The stories in the Old Testament, the stories in the New Testament.
Noah's Ark, all this stuff.
Oh, it's critical, absolutely. And it's stuck with me even to today. I thought about that today as I'm watching her give these children these Bibles.
My grandmother gave me a Bible, and in the front of it said, all in life, any problems you have will be solved, can be found in this book. Read it often.
Yeah.
So,
when I think about my parents, my dad was a construction worker, did concrete for a living. My mother, most of my life is at home, and I think later when I got into maybe middle school, elementary or high school, she started working as a cook in a cafeteria at school. So working folks, I am almost certain my dad never let a prayer in open.
Yeah.
in church. Never, wasn't a singer, wasn't a speaker, but we were there every Sunday. We were there on Wednesday nights. We were there on Sunday nights. And although he wasn't a leader, later in life, it became obvious to me it was important to him. that I be there.
Irregardless if he was a public speaker.
Yeah.
I often wonder about that too. My dad was never a real big preaching, but he always went, you know.
Yeah.
Always believed in God, all that stuff.
Right.
But wasn't, maybe not the guy that, you know, people's got different talents
Absolutely.
and different things that they do. But I think maybe just the presence or knowing that it comes out later in life.
Exactly.
Do you ever watch the movie Slumdog Millionaire?
No.
Boy, that's a great movie. I mean, it's got some gory parts in it, but other than that, it's a great movie. This guy goes on this talk show, and he's not supposed to win. He's not smart, but his life experiences, he remembered back, and he got all the questions right, not because he was smart, but because of his experiences. So maybe we do that today too. You know, maybe just by.
Yeah. I don't think, and I'm not sure intelligence has anything to do with education.
Well, I don't either. They say it's like knowledge is knowing that a tomato's a fruit, but wisdom's knowing not to put it in a fruitcake.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a good one. Yeah. I have to remember that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So the experiences in the early church, do you think you would have found religion had you not had that? Say they didn't go to church, but they were just good, moral, ethical, working class people. Would you have still?
I want to think God would have found me.
Do you feel like God's always with you?
Yeah. And that's one of those things I think I got as a child because I've been through a lot. Looking back, you know, you get old, I'm almost 71. You start thinking about your life, and I think, man, you know, God has been with me, you know, in Vietnam and Germany and Saudi Arabia and South America, every place that I have found myself. And I've always, in the back of my mind, felt like, you know, if worst thing comes to worst, you know, I'm a Christian, I'll be okay. You know, if I get killed, it'll be fine.
It gives you hope.
Yeah, that's the yeah, exactly.
Do you think that were there times when you didn't feel like you were deserving?
Oh, yeah, every day. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I think maybe that's the definition of grace, isn't it?
That's the way I read it.
Yeah. 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 I got up this morning and if you on what time you got up, but at my house it was a bit foggy. Ice was on the ground and the sun was coming through. And I thought, man, this, you know, there's God right there. This is evident how beautiful this was. He's got this.
When did you feel the need to? Because you were a military. Military was your main thing, right? Were you going?
No, I guess really practicing law was my main career.
So was you really into it? I mean, just it was law.
There was probably a time in my life, yeah, probably. Law school, particularly law school in those early years, practicing law. I still had this recurring nightmare that happened to me that I am having to go take the bar exam and I'm not ready, you know, and it scares me to death, you know, because you go to law school and And then before that, of course, college and all that. But you come up, and your whole life is dependent upon the results of this one exam. Can I practice law or not practice law if I don't, if I don't pass?
Do you still have that dream?
Occasionally, yeah.
Do you think the law is metaphor for something else?
I really hadn't given it that much thought. Maybe.
Maybe it's a metaphor for something else that's not, because you already passed the test.
Yeah.
That's over.
Yeah. It's just not being ready.
For whatever?
For what? Yeah. Yeah. It's and I actually had this thought. It's not really a dream. It's just a thought, because there's no episode or anything. But that when you're in law school, at least when I was in law school, we had 3 or 4 people that we studied with. And I'm thinking, I need to call, and I had not seen this one guy since we graduated. Mm-hmm. And I think, I need to call him and ask him this question, because he's smart, you know.
In the dream.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
And it may not mean anything. It may just be, they still don't know what dreams really mean, do they? Yeah. Except in the Bible, who was it interpreted dream? Was it Joseph?
Well, Joseph did a pretty good job of it, yeah.
I mean, that's what saved his life, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They said he can interpret dreams.
Yeah.
So maybe dreams are to be interpreted.
Yeah. Or maybe it's for some people and some people not. Who knows?
Maybe just Joseph had it.
Yeah. Yeah. But
did you feel compelled? I mean, during these times in the military and in law, were you real active in church stuff?
I was always that. Yeah, I've never not been involved in church. That's just that. I guess I think that's the way my mom and dad raised me. That was just what you did.
What religion were they?
We grew up Southern Baptist. And,
so, not primitive Baptist, but Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
I know there's minuscule differences,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then there's First Baptist, Primitive Baptist.
Well, I think First Baptist may be Southern Baptist. Mm. Yeah. Great, and I still, probably my favorite type of music is just old gospel music.
The old hymns?
Yeah.
That's what I like, the old hymns.
That,
I can't get used to the new stuff.
Yeah.
Can you?
No.
It almost doesn't feel right to me for some reason. That's probably wrong, but...
Yeah. It's part of getting old.
What song, if you was to die, would you want them to sing at your funeral or play hymnals?
It's probably not a gospel song as I think about it, but there was a group in the 60s called the Marmalades, and they did a song called Reflections, Reflections of My Life. And it was not a religious song at all, but I think that it's a good message. And I want folks to have fond, good memories. I hope to say he was a pretty good old boy.
Everybody says that.
Yeah.
You're already there.
Yeah.
But maybe it's more memories than what we were told to do or not do. Maybe it was more examples, and maybe not even good examples. I mean, you can learn from your parents' mistakes. Maybe how they handle those.
Yeah.
Because you can't regulate what's thrown at you, and you can't regulate what addictions you have or tendencies you have, right?
Yeah, we were studying the 10 Commandments last year, and you mentioned that. One of the things that I learned, you'd think you'd learn all this stuff, but here I am, 70 years old, I'm still learning a lot. Mm-hmm. But the 10 Commandments doesn't really say obey your parents. It says honor your parents.
Honor your parents.
There's a difference.
Honor your father and mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the days of their
But if you get an abusive parent, or parent is telling
you couldn't obey if they were saying the wrong thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
How close do you think that's translated? You ever wonder about that?
Well, yeah. Well, we did a pretty good little study on that, particularly the Ten Commandments, and people disagree, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but there is a way of reading those things where it could be actually a love letter to God telling us how He wants us to live,
or a better way to live.
Yeah, because if you think about the commandments, you can really boil it down to one: love. Mm-hmm. Love God, love others.
Love or respect, however you want to.
Yeah. And all these other things, I think, are teaching us how to love.
Or a better way to live.
Yeah. I learned this, that the word Torah, which I've always thought meant the law books, the Genesis, Exodus, those actually could be better interpreted as the teachings. Mm-hmm. And that makes a little difference. Is it law or is it teaching?
It's a big difference.
And if it's the teaching, what's it teaching us?
Well,
how to love.
Where was it? It says the law of Moses was not to. I don't even know what I'm saying. But it's showing you how to live. The law of Moses is not to condemn you, or maybe it's the New Testament law is not to condemn you, but to show you how to live.
Did you ever read the book The Shack?
No.
It's also a movie, but it's a pretty neat book. And in their book, the main character is having this conversation with God, and the God, the father character, actually it was a female, but the God, the creator character, and he asked God about that, and God said, I give you these commandments to show you what you couldn't do, because you can't. And Jesus talked about that. He says, if man, that's impossible, but for God, things are all possible. And it was only because of Jesus that we can, because we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to fulfill those laws. That was the whole purpose of Jesus.
Well, the Sermon on the Mount, do you think he was, when he was said, don't do this, don't do that, he was referring to what the law of Moses was, and not, and now you're relieved from that, the way I read it.
Yeah,
is that too liberal?
Well, he's definitely reinterpreting it.
Yeah, that's why they was mad at him.
Yeah. He says the law, something like the law says, "Thou shalt not kill." I tell you, you ought not hate your brother.
That's right. That's what I was saying.
Yeah.
He didn't come to condemn the law, but to fulfill it.
And the fulfillment of law was love.
Yeah. Which, it gets complicated, doesn't it?
It can be. We can make it complicated, but I don't think it was meant to be.
Somehow or another,
when Jesus was asked that very question, what's the most important law? Remember his response?
Love thy neighbor as thyself.
Love the Lord your God of all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
Now implementing it. Now that's another question. That's hard to implement it, but to state it is pretty simple. But to do it is another thing.
But boy, they were really wanting him to, in the Sermon on the Mount, they were really trying to get him to say that those people were wrong, right?
I don't know about the Sermon on the Mount so much, but later on.
But the Sermon on the Mount, he was saying, it's been said not to do this, not to do that. Yeah. But he was talking about the law of Moses and not the New Testament. Yeah.
But he was kind of up in the ante on them, I think. Because when he says, it tells you not to murder, I tell you don't hate. I mean, that's harder than not murdering.
Yeah. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
He was up in the ante in a sense.
I think he was.
Because they were just trying to avoid the rules and regulations.
Yeah.
So did you feel a greater need to preach more than just going to being active, as you said?
You know, it was a process, years of process of things that I went through, and then the opportunity that God gave me a couple times. And let me kind of give you an example. Back in 1991, 1991, I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm, and I felt when I came back from that the call to start sharing my testimony, share what God done for me, and that kind of thing. That was 91.
What had he done for you at that point?
Well, there's a bit. But let's stop right there. Let me go back then.
Okay.
So I want to go back to the early 80s. Early 80s, I was in Germany a lot, in and out, doing Army stuff. Mostly over there for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, TDY stuff, short terms and coming back. And I never forget, I had a day off. And so I'm looking around, going around, and I forget whether it was Mannheim or Kaiserslautern or Karlsruhe, one of those cities that was around with the Army post. I was just wandering around, just looking at sightseeing. And I love architecture, not an expert at it, but I love to look in what I know what I like.
Yeah.
And I love art stuff. I'm not an expert, but I know what I like. Well, I found myself in this Catholic cathedral, Roman Catholic cathedral, huge thing. Just inspired by the architecture. And it was middle of the week, ain't hardly anybody there. So I go in, nobody says I can't. So I go in and I'm wandering around looking at all this art, this stories of the Old Testament in art, architecture, all sorts of I don't know, different paintings and so forth, but they're come and I'm watching it, I'm looking at this thing, and I'm feeling really sort of moved. And so I finally come to this portrait of Jesus. I am by myself, but I have this overwhelming spiritual feeling. I ain't said a word, nobody said, I'm just looking. So that was and obviously I still remember that. That was
You mean like a warm feeling or a sad feeling or
all the above. Yeah.
just different, totally different?
It was what I would call a spiritual feeling. I don't really, warm but sad. You know that this whole thing was because he loved me so much. And like you said earlier, I didn't deserve it. You know, those sort of
What
feelings.
had led up to that day? Anything specific?
No,
Just going in,
just went in.
just to wonder.
Yeah. So that would have been in the early 80s. Fast forward to 90, we get called up to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Get called in August. I think it was probably September, October. We got everything's coming in, and we're finding places and getting everything set up, and it's busy. I remember I was living probably as poorly as a person could live as far as how I acted. My language was awful. I was cussing and MFing and, just all that stuff going on, and ended up, for some reason, went to an Air Force, I was in the Army, Air Force chaplain, I'll never forget this guy named Arnold, came out to our area and did a chapel service. And his whole comment that I remember was, even here, or maybe especially here in the middle of the desert, you need to be acting like you're a Christian. And everybody will feed on it. And I'm thinking, well, I sure ain't. It just convicted me of that. And
Why did he say everybody needed to act like that?
I don't know. That was part of his sermon. I'm obviously paraphrasing it, but that was just his sermon. But it spoke to me. And I started acting better. I started not using the bad language. It was amazing how much easier life was in the middle of the desert just because of that one sermon. Christmas Eve, 1990, I'm in Riyadh. I'd got sent to Riyadh at that point. We're near Riyadh. We're out having a Christmas Eve service in the middle of the desert in this tent. And General Schwarzkopf comes in. I mean, we're in there, and he like right there.
You're starstruck.
He's there, and I'm sitting here looking at this guy, and this guy he is in deep prayer. I could just tell by looking, he was really concerned about what was fixing to happen. You know, that was a month before the ground war started. I didn't know that. He did.
Yeah.
He did. But just to tell he could pray, and it hit me at that point. That's the point that hit me, that I needed to get back and just tell my experience of what God was with me during the desert. That was the point.
That was the message you felt like you needed to tell, that God was with you through there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you set out to do that?
I did.
Because you were already in church.
I didn't. And that was one of the many times I failed. I didn't do what I felt to. I did. You know, I came back. I'm in Cleveland now. I'm in the DA's office. I got kids. I got a wife. I got a life, and I get busy, and I just don't do anything. And it just broke my heart after I thought about it. Well, time goes on. A divorce goes on. I find myself alone.
Was it a bad divorce?
Is there a good one?
Probably not.
You know? Yeah. But I found myself alone, and I think God used that to say, hey, I still want you to do something.
Well, how describe alone? What, I mean, I was alone here at the office before y'all got here, but I didn't feel lonely.
Yeah. You know, it's, you know, when your life is around your children and they're no longer there. Your life is with your family, and all of a sudden you're no longer there. And I was busy.
So did they go live with her, or
Yeah.
were they just grown up?
Yeah, they went to live with
So
her.
that was a big void.
Oh, it was awful. It was awful.
Horrible.
Yeah. That's when I think the Army became more and more important to me, because all of a sudden I don't have this family to do stuff with. So I'm doing more Army stuff. I'm just spending, you know, I got nothing. What else I do?
Fell into work.
Yeah. Yeah. And so fast forward to 2008.
So this rocked on for 10 years or 15 years in that state?
Well, I got divorced in 2000, or
Okay.
1999
Okay.
to 2000. That's when the divorce finally happened. 2006, I know I'm going to be facing retirement from the Army in a little while, because you have to be mandatory. You know, if you don't, at some point, if you don't get promoted, you have to get out. And I had made colonel, and didn't think I had a shot at making a star. And so my pastor at the time at First Presbyterians, and I was teaching Sunday school. I was still in church.
Yeah. You had never stopped that.
Had never stopped that. He said, Wayne, why don't you consider going to the Commission Lay Pastors program? It's our denomination has this 2-year study program. And my idea was, when the Army ends, I will be able to go and fill in for some pastor that's going to go on vacation or going somewhere that I would just go fill in occasionally. I did not have any idea of becoming a pastor. I was just going to go preach. And so I did. I did this study thing, and which was a great experience. It was the first semester was Old Testament, second semester was New Testament, third semester was theology, and fourth semester was kind of putting all this stuff together, practice preaching, all this kind of stuff. Great experience. I got accepted to War College. And I thought, well, I get a war college, I can make a star. At that very time, I got asked to go to foreigner, but I couldn't do both.
Boy, how'd you figure that one out?
Yeah, I thought, and I go back to my memory of 1990. You know, God asked me to do something in 1990. It's now 2008. He's given me a second opportunity to do what He asked me to do. The answer was pretty easy for me. I retired Army and ended up in foreigner for 8 years.
You were 56,
I'm not good at math.
but you were
Yeah.
you were not at retirement age.
No. Well, I could retire from the Army, but I couldn't draw it until I get to a certain age.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so I did. I said, I'm gonna, you know, God's given me a second chance to do something.
You really felt compelled to do that?
I did.
I mean,
Only
just,
time in my life.
you just
And
couldn't
I'm
get
an
it.
old man then.
Just couldn't get it off your mind, or what? I
I
mean, a
don't
lot of people say God spoke to me, but you didn't have that,
No,
right?
and I don't know that it was on my mind that whole time, but when Dr. Tanner suggested I do this, it come back to me. You know, in 1990, when you had this feeling and you didn't do it, and now you got another chance to do it. And how do you not do that?
If you've got that inner conviction,
Yeah.
but sometimes you don't know if you got an inner conviction or if you just got an itch to do something different. But you're saying it was beyond that.
Yeah, I think. I mean, that was just me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it may have been different for somebody else, but that was the way I felt about it.
Do you think that while we go through, I always think everything seems so choppy when we're in it, mixed up, so complicated, just total chaos. And then I look back 5 years or 20 years later and I say, boy, that was a well-written book.
Yeah,
But we don't feel like it at the time.
yeah.
Do you feel like that now? You look back and say, man, it was chaos then, but you look back now and say, man, that was a well-written book.
Yeah, a friend of mine's son and daughter having some domestic issues right now, and he wanted to talk to me and all that kind of stuff. And so we talked, and I look back at the divorce. Awful. I want nobody to go through that. But what was awful for me gave me a chance to be alone and to think about things and think about my spiritual life, think about God, and God used that, I think, to wake me up.
And maybe to help them
Yeah.
through that time.
Yeah. It was awful at the time, but it was a time where
I mean, horrible or just bad?
horrible.
God, hope I don't ever go through
Yeah, I
one.
hope you don't either.
But if you do, you'll live, right?
Yeah. yeah. Yeah.
Do you look back and think, hey, maybe some of those mistakes were my fault?
Oh, I think most of them were my fault. Yeah, looking back at it. Yeah, I've screwed up more than anybody's share.
But at the time, you didn't think it was.
At the time, I didn't think. You know, you just don't. You just react.
Yeah, just reaction.
Yeah.
And in your defense, you're busy, you're raising kids, you're trying to make things work, and you just don't have time to sit down and, make all the right moves, right?
Yeah, that's well, but you need to make time to do it. You need to make time to think about it.
Well, that's easy to say now,
Yeah, I know. And all these young parents now, gosh almighty, I think it's tougher now than when my kids were. My kids, I think, are better parents than I was. I look at my 3 kids, and I am thankful. They're all 3, and this is maybe my weight, but they're all 3 successfully employed. They're all 3 active in their own church. And I don't know what else I could ask for.
Well, I mean, and that didn't come by accident. So you must not have been that bad.
Well, and I think, looking back at my parents, hard workers. I mean, if Dad, well, you're the construction guy. Dad worked as a carpenter.
The tough way to go,
Tough
man.
way to go. And there are times in the wintertime when he didn't have a job, but we'd be out cutting wood. We'd be out whatever it took to get by.
And part of him was just trying to look productive to his families. Does that make sense? We got to get this done, even though maybe you didn't have to, but he's...
I think we had to, to survive. Yeah.
So you look back and say, okay, I made a bunch, but everybody could say that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I've been given so much more, for lack of a better word, blessings and those kind of things than probably, my life really deserved.
Do we think that's in God's plan too? Even the mistakes? You ever wonder about that?
Yeah, I think about it. I would tell you that I'm the one right now. I don't pretend to understand God. I don't get that at all. I don't know, why He loves us so much. This whole thing about freedom of choice and free will, I know it's out there. I know God's in charge and God's ultimately going to win, and how that works together, I'm not smart enough to know all that.
Or claim it.
Yeah.
You just...
Yeah.
Do you think that that looking back, that divorce and remarriage was in God's plan? Did He already know that?
I don't know.
But you're going with it, doing the best. I mean,
My wife, now we've been married for 11 years, and I learn a lot from her. And she probably don't even know this, but sometimes she'll say something or do something, and it'll take me a while for it to sink in. Mm-hmm. And I'll go back to her and say, that's a pretty good idea, or you may be right about that. And I think in my first marriage, I would have never gone back and admitted that I was wrong about something. And,
yeah, I'm bad about that. I'm bad about giving compliments. I do it in a real roundabout way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes if second marriages are more successful than first because of those reasons, because of things you learned you should have done, especially if you're married at 18 or 19 years old.
Yeah.
But back in the 50s, and 60s, they got married at 17 and 18 years old.
I was 19.
And they all lived, they all stayed, maybe that was before MTV.
Yeah. Yeah.
But miniskirts were in, right?
Yeah, I loved every minute of that.
Yeah. That was part of the problem, I guess.
Yeah.
When you think back at your childhood, do you think back at, I asked you this a minute ago, but some of the hymnals that you remember that could just tear you up if everybody's got those. Might be different to somebody else.
I was listening to Glenn Campbell the other night, and he did Amazing Grace. Mm-hmm. And in that he used those bagpipes. Mm. That still tears me up.
Oh, what is it about bagpipes that'll do that?
Yeah.
I reckon it's the Irish descent we've got.
I guess, I don't know. Yeah,
but a bagpipe will do it, won't it?
Yeah.
How they can play that, I'll never know.
Yeah.
It's got all those horns and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
The hymnals, did y'all have the red hymnals? Didn't everybody have the red book that had you about knew what page numbers there were?
The one I remember, again, the Southern Baptist, I thought it was blue, but the one page I remember was page 240, Just As I Am. We sang that
Lord.
Every
Boy,
Sunday.
if that don't get you. Was it the invitation?
Yeah.
Boy, that'll get you. I had somebody explain that to me. Did that make you feel inadequate? That song? Do you think it's saying?
That's a good way. Yeah.
Well, I had somebody explain it to me a whole different way, and it changed my whole look about that song.
What was that?
he says it's not saying you're getting ready to die just as you are and you're going to burn in hell. He's saying it's saying God's accepting you just as you are. And it changed my whole look of that song.
Yeah. It's good. I have to remember that.
I had never,
Yeah.
Gene Officer told me that.
Yeah. So we grew up, I'm thinking we're probably close to the same age.
Sure.
We grew up in that hellfire and brimstone era.
Oh, was going to hell
Yeah.
in a few minutes.
Yeah. And I think in a way that was probably not good.
I don't
Because
think it was.
it didn't tell us about the love and mercy of God, and that's really what it's all about. So,
That's where we got that "Just As I Am" song. I
Yeah.
mean, if that didn't get you walking down front, nothing would.
oh, well, I just remember sitting there going through it time and time again and thinking, I wish somebody'd go down so we can go home. So,
Did they keep singing verses
yeah.
till somebody come down?
Yeah.
Boy, they'd thump those Bibles, wouldn't they? Do you ever watch that documentary? It's a real good documentary. It's like 6 hours long. And it talks about, it's a strange documentary, but it talks about how when we came to America, the Scottish and the Irish came through, that they were more rebels that kind of wanted to get off on themselves, and that's how they hit the Alleghenies, and they migrated through the Alleghenies through Virginia, North Carolina, and what's now Tennessee, and it followed their religious beliefs with the music they sang at that time, and it was fascinating how, because most of those songs came from Irish folk songs that were translated into religious songs. And they would say that they were mostly Puritans and snake handlers. And that when the song leader got up to sing, he didn't want to be proud of the congregation, so he would just read the hymnal, and somebody else would raise the hymn and start singing it. And that's where we get today, stand while we sing. So it went through that whole, it was really fascinating.
It is interesting.
I mean, it's really a good, and the guy's got a good voice, you know.
I think a lot of them, that my memory, and I'm no expert, but it seemed like, didn't John Wesley write a bunch of those songs?
John Wesley Hardin, was it Hardin?
No,
No,
it was
it
Wesley.
wasn't Hardin.
It was just Wesley.
John Wesley.
Yeah. I remember Wesley
Yeah,
College.
a lot of the religious colleges are Wesleyan.
Yeah.
But no, most of those songs, I think, came from Irish folk songs. They didn't have copyright laws in.
Right.
So they just sort of migrated into. I always liked that song book, page 277. I remember the page number. Jesus, Hold My Hand.
Oh yeah.
That's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great one. Yeah.
See, that counteracts the "Just As I Am" for me.
Yeah. We would have a community gospel singing a couple times a year when I was in Farner. And one of the ladies, I think she went to the Church of God of Prophecy, but she could play that piano and that song. And that's a fast song.
It's a fast beat song.
It was, yeah.
Have you ever noticed the people that lead that song are generally ones that are just a little bit on the edge? It's like they like that song too for that reason.
Yeah, I hadn't given that a lot of thought.
Did you do a lot of traveling? You've been to how many countries?
Well, it just, I was in Germany a lot, but we'd had a day or two off. I didn't realize this till I was over. All those European countries are so close together. So, we had a day off. We may go to Paris, come back.
Yeah.
So I've been to France once. I've been to Switzerland. If I had time off to do some stuff. So those, I've been there. I wouldn't,
Do you see any commonalities between people that relate to religion in a way, or not necessarily religious beliefs, but just in the basic human.
Yeah, and where it really came to light was from 2000 2008. I did some missionary work. I'd take my vacation, and it was an organization, I think it's still around, called Rivers of the World. And what we would do is we'd get medical supplies and take them into these third world countries, and fundamentally get them on a boat and go down the river and hit villages and do medical stuff. And then we would have a kind of Bible school stuff for the kids, and then in the afternoon or evening we would have a service. And was able to go to Peru and Brazil and Mexico a couple of times, Honduras, Vietnam, and all those people fundamentally want what you and I want. They want to get by, and they want their families to be good and healthy, and they want their kids to do better than they did.
Other than that, it's just differences in sports or hobbies.
Yeah.
So you really sensed that was.
Yeah.
You ever watch Bourdain? Anthony Bourdain? Boy, I've gotten on him. That is the most. I'm like you. I never watched it, but I started watching it about a month ago. That's the best. That's one of the best shows on TV.
What is it?
It's Anthony Bourdain. It's got Parts Unknown, and it's No Reservations. And he goes to foreign countries, Quebec, Sweden, Canada, Pakistan, places I hadn't even heard of. And he's a cook. But what he'll do is, it's one of the best. If you haven't watched it, you gotta watch it. But he'll go to these countries, and he'll meet a local chef, and he'll eat at one of their fancier places. And he'll talk about the food and what they have and how they cooked it, and get in a general conversation about the politics of that area. And then he'll go into the streets to the street vendors, and he'll see how they cook what we would call hot dogs or nachos, but whatever their version is.
Right.
And then he'll end up at a house in somebody's living room that's in the urban areas of that country, and he'll just have general conversation with them. He'll sit at their table and eat. It's amazing.
Yeah,
There's a reason why
Is it
people.
on the Food Channel or what's
It's
it
on. You can go to YouTube or Prime or Amazon Prime or Paramount, and I never did watch it when it was on. I always saw the advertising, thought it seemed silly, but boy, it's not.
Yeah.
It's really good. But he seemed to have the same concept that you have. Is what brought that to my mind. Is that in some of his shows he'll say, it's obvious that people just want to be safe, want to have a feeling of connection, and want to take care of themselves and their family.
Yeah. Those were good experiences for me. And I actually thought that I might continue doing that when I got called, to Foreigner. My idea was, I would do this stuff. 'Cause I could go help, and I'll never forget. I gave a talk. It was a personal testimony to. I think we were in Brazil. I forget, but it was along the Amazon River, and because I don't speak good English, let alone Portuguese or Spanish or Vietnamese.
Well, you don't need that as a DA.
Yeah. And so they had an interpreter there, and so I'm giving this testimony, and I'm trying to tell this little joke. And so I get to the punchline that I'm thinking everybody ought to laugh. They ain't saying nothing.
So, Anthony does that too on his show. He'll give me some odd moments,
Yeah.
Do you think your kids was there any through that divorce or that 8 years you're talking about during that lonely period, was there a good connection with them?
No, there was, the first few years was not. And then it,
Was there
Not
any, not a good connection, but was there some animosities too? That's got to go with it. I mean,
I guess, I don't know. I know that the relationship is really good now. And it got good, and I apologized to him for my actions and what that part of it. And they're good kids. They're forgiving kids.
in time they'll understand that more. Don't you agree?
Yeah, maybe, and I hope I hope they'll never have to go through it.
Well, and you're not by yourself. A lot of people have done that. I mean, that's the age-old issue, divorce and remarriage, and I always wonder where will you be buried? Will you be buried? I think that's one reason that cremations have gotten so popular is because so much divorce and remarried people don't know where to bury them. Bury them next to mama, or well, that's awkward. So you bury them next to the new husband or to the old.
Yeah, I don't know. Mine's easy. They're gonna stick me at the National Cemetery. So,
In Chattanooga.
yeah.
How many's in the National Cemetery? I bet there's. How many could there possibly? Does every city have a national cemetery, or just big city? How they figure that out?
I don't know. I went to Robbie Cody here in town. The
companion. I know him a little bit.
Yeah.
I know him a little bit, not real well.
Yeah. Well, he's sort of made I paid him to get all that stuff.
Got it all together.
He knows all that stuff,
Yeah.
and I think Robbie's a good guy.
Yeah, he done real well, hadn't he?
Yeah.
In the funeral and here in the funeral,
Yeah.
he's pretty much taken over, hadn't he?
It looks like it. Yeah.
When you go back to thinking about, how your journey, do you really think you made mistakes, or do you think you were just living and that's part of life? I mean, everybody makes mistakes, but we can't burden ourselves with them, can we?
Well, so I think that's the beauty of being a Christian is this thing called confession and forgiveness. I don't know how you get through life without going insane if it wasn't for forgiveness.
I had this barber that cut my hair, Raymond Woods. He was one of the smartest men I ever knew. And he was an atheist, but he was still a smart person, intelligence-wise. And he'd give me homework when I would go get my hair cut. It was 1 hour, and I always said I'd go see my psychiatrist and get a haircut.
Right.
And me and Larry Presswood had the same haircutters, if that tells you anything. But anyway, one book he gave me was The 7 Tattoos. And I took it, and it wasn't that long, so I thought, well, I'll read this one before I go back, And I read it, and it was a guy that had. The book was he was standing in the mirror as he was older, and he just happened to look at himself, and he had gotten 7 tattoos over the years, and each chapter goes through what he was thinking during that time and how that tattoo. How he got it and why he got. He even went through how they did the ink, and it was a really really good book. But the psychological reason why he did it, and the memory, and the last tattoo he got was on redemption and how he was getting redemption for the 6th tattoo for his life with the 6 tattoos.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting. So Do you think everybody goes through that, no matter how good they are or how bad they are?
Probably. Because and again, this is just my interpretation of Scripture, but I think that I was taught that none of us are deserving of God's love, and we all have failed. We have all disobeyed God at one point or another, ever what it is, and we all need redemption. We all need forgiveness.
Well, let's think about the guy that sold Jesus for the shackles. Who was that?
Oh, Judas?
Judas, yeah. When we use his name today as traitors. Judas.
Benedict Arnold.
Benedict Arnold.
Yeah.
We still use them.
Yeah.
That's how bad they were.
Yeah.
But do you think that maybe Judas was in the plan? Or was that Judas's...
In my thinking, and I don't know. I can just tell you what I think. I think so. I think, yeah.
So maybe Judas was wrong and needed... And then later in the book, I think he repented from that or asked for forgiveness.
Well, there's a number of biblical books out there that didn't make it into our Bible.
Sure.
There's one called the Book of Judas, and it's interesting to read that. And in that book, it sort of indicates that Judas was doing God's will.
Who do you think wrote Judas? Do you think? I mean, we got to go into that, right? But that is a book, the Book of Judas.
Yeah. And it was written about the time of the other ones that this didn't make it in when the Council of Nicaea decided we're going to have these books in the Bible and these aren't going to get it, and that didn't make it.
Mm-hmm. Like the Book of
Mary.
Josephus, didn't he write one?
Well, actually, Josephus was a historian that actually lived right after the time of Jesus.
He was sort of the guy that put up the fake news, right?
Maybe.
Some of it.
yeah.
But Judas, I never knew that they had a book on Judas.
Yeah.
Wonder where you get a copy of that.
You can Google anything.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and in today's time, how do we even know what we're reading other than the King James? I mean, if you Google something on the Bible, it'll say which of the 21 language. I think there's 21 translations I counted one time.
Yeah.
How do you know which one is right? So we're going with the King James.
Well, I think they all have the same message. They have different nuances, but the message is still there. I think that God loves you.
Unless you want to get into the weeds of the exact do's and don'ts, then we start getting into different.
Well, and the problem with that, Dee, is nobody has originals of anything. The best we got is copies of copies of copies of stuff, and the original Aramaic, the original, some of the original Greek is not there.
What about those they found in the cave?
Yeah, those are interesting. One of the most interesting ones about that to me was the Book of Job. They found, because they're not able to read or have the whole thing. They're putting them together, and this says this says this.
They're having to fill in the blanks.
So this must say, but in the Book of Job, in one of the books of the Dead Sea Scrolls, Job ends before he gets all of his stuff back.
Ah, that's interesting. Before he even went to he was married twice, wasn't he?
Yeah, but at the end, God gave him back all this kind of stuff, and it ends before he gets that stuff back. And I got to thinking, that makes more sense to me, because how many times in life do things turn out just rosy?
Well, I wondered myself, how old was Job? How long did Job live? Because he was like multi-rich, right, at the time. He had 7 kids and a wife, and everything was going great, and then all of a sudden everything goes bad and he loses everything.
But the point of that is, which is right?
Boy, that's a tough one.
But the message, I think, is still there that, I don't understand God, and I'm not going to pretend to understand God. I know that God loves me, and in the end, God's going to take care of me.
That's the main message of Job.
Yeah.
But where did we get in the King James Bible, this second. So the ones they found in the Dead Sea Scrolls did not have the second part of Job.
At least one of them.
Yeah.
I think there's more
Yeah.
than one. Yeah.
I watched.
And I'm gonna say it. I have not personally looked at it. I'm just telling you what I've
So
read.
we're just going on. I was watching a thing where they said that Isaiah. Is his cord good? We're good. That Isaiah, I believe it was Isaiah, was exact, word for word.
Well, I find that hard to believe because they don't have word for word of everything. They have parts of stuff and they put things together and then they interpolate what it would have been in the middle.
They said the Dead Sea Scrolls were in like 10,000 pieces.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. Yeah.
But yeah, you're
And there's
right.
a
The
number of them.
message. You know, I wondered about the story of Job. You know, you get different thoughts about it. Sometimes you read books and you get a whole different interpretation than you did previous. But I always think about Job. During that time, everybody was saying, "You must have cursed God. He must be punishing you." But Job had not. How many times does somebody do good and we assume God's blessing them?
Yeah.
So we can't really assume either one.
Right.
So the guy that, in other words, could a guy be in prison for 50 years and still be a good father?
Ever hear of Nelson Mandela?
Yeah, that's true.
You know? Yeah. One of the fascinating, to me, the most fascinating part of Job is the very early on. You know, Satan is not a bad character in this. Satan is a prosecutor. He's reporting back to God, I'm going to, and Satan asked God the question, does Job love you for nothing? I think it's the most fascinating question, and it bothers me constantly when I think about it. Do I love God because I think I'm going to be saved because I love God, or do I love God because God is God?
That's a tough one.
That's the biggest question in that whole book.
I hadn't thought of that. But he did. He went before God and asked him, said, "Let me tempt Job and I'll show you," right?
Yeah, and then we go from there.
Yeah.
You know the story better than I do probably, but yeah. Yeah, that question is haunting if you think about it. You know.
Yeah, how much
And is me and God quid pro quo, you know, or do I just love God because I know He's the Creator?
how many people have lost their child and
gosh.
cursed God?
Yeah.
Right?
That was That's an awful thought. I did a lot of funerals when I was in Foreigner, and we had one child, and that was that was so hard.
You know, when a guy that's older dies and he has a good family and all of his family's there and he's got a good history, et cetera, you feel horrible. But when somebody's young, and I've often thought of this, think about the boy that's 12, 13 and his father dies. I mean, golly.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned more than anything else when I was going through the Commission Lay Pastors program is sometimes it's just better not to say anything. It's just your presence lets them know you love them. And there's just no words.
There's no words.
Yeah.
I was reading this book on what to say to people at funerals. And you're not supposed to say, "I know how you feel," because you don't know how they feel.
Yeah. Yeah.
You think God's through with you yet? You think this is it? Just your...
Well, you know, no. If you'd asked me this a few years ago, I would have probably said yes. After I retired, we came back from Foreigner. I retired in 2016 from the DA's office, and my wife's health got bad, and we moved back down here from Foreigner. Honestly, I went through about a year of depression. I'm thinking, I'm not useful for anything anymore.
Did you have trouble getting up in the morning?
Sometimes,
Just
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And so I prayed to God, you know, and it sounds awful, but to either use me or get me out of here. And I'm busy now. I mean, I probably told you before, but I love doing my Sunday school class. We started a men's prayer group on Mondays at 10. This Wednesday, the pastors asked me to help teach the confirmation class for some of our young people. It's going to last for a while. I preach occasionally. I'm doing a little practice in law now. I probably told you I did some criminal defense work, and the judges asked me to do it.
And your friend up in Middle Tennessee, did that turn out okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah. But
that turned out good.
It turned out how it ought to have.
But all was good.
Yeah. But I say that is just to suggest to you that I feel like I'm being used again, and so I'm.
Do you think God helped get you busy and out of the? We hate to use the word depression, but we've all been there. You know, it's not taboo. I don't think it's just a down and out. But use whatever word.
It is. Yeah.
You know, it's just down and out and no get up and go sort of.
Yeah.
Did any one thing get you up going, or was it just a slow process of getting going?
Well, I think several things happened. Again, I started teaching this Sunday school class. Rodney Murray out at YMCA got a hold of me and said, "Hey, man, how to get back on our board?" And so I'm doing some volunteer work out there with those guys. And I probably mentioned to you before, but I think what they do with the after school program, we're in every school in both city and county. We provide aftercare for kids that their parents need to work and can't afford aftercare. So I'm a big proponent of that. So yeah, I think a lot of stuff sort of came together. I think God put them in my path to do that.
So it wasn't like you heard a song or you watched a movie or somebody shot at you, so you got yourself in gear. It was just you just got busy and that did it.
I started saying yes to some stuff, like the Sunday school class, like the why.
You're in good health.
I'm better. Yeah,
You had the back issue, right?
Well,
No, the heart issue.
Well, both. In 2019, I had open heart surgery.
Yeah, right after your toe came
Right
off.
after
That's bothered me ever since.
But they got me on some. I've been diagnosed with arthritis, and they got me on some medication.
Oh,
now.
everybody is with that.
I'm gonna tell you, I didn't know how bad it was till I got it. That was awful. But they got me on medication now, so I'm going back to the gym and doing some stuff. And
they got you on that Baccarat or whatever they call
no,
it.
it starts with an M, about that long.
Yeah. You feel better on it?
Absolutely. I'm not. I was in pain every day. You just deal with it. I'm not.
Where at?
It'll be shoulders, back of my legs.
Well, I woke up this morning sore,
Yeah.
but I don't. Yeah. I'm not going to say I got arthritis.
It didn't go away.
Stayed all day.
Yeah.
Take vitamin D. Didn't help.
Yeah, I've been taking vitamin D for years. Yeah.
What kind do you take?
Nature Valley or something like that.
D3 with the zinc and magnesium.
Yeah.
How many of those you take?
I take one a day. I forget how many milligrams, or I forget what.
Yeah, I think you can take up to like 5 of those a day. I found out if I get sore for a little while, I can take about 3 a day, spread them out, and I go back to 1 and I'm fine. Something about that loosens me up.
Right. Well, I wanted to shift gears and tell you one other event that was significant to me. The first mission trip I was on, we went to Peru, and my function in this was, I was loading supplies on the boat, and in the process every day we had a video or film about Jesus, and there was no electricity where we went, so we had a generator. So my job was to get the generator going, setting things up.
Mm-hmm.
When had a big white sheet, we'd show it on. But the night before we were going to launch, we're in a town called Iquitos, Peru, and we're loading up the stuff. And one of the guys with us from South Carolina, who was a Hispanic Baptist minister. I think I was the only Presbyterian in the group. And so he starts talking to some guys on the dock, a little bit dock, and we loading up and loading things up. Well, he's talking to them, and I kind of go over there and I realize he's getting a crowd, 15, 20 people. All of a sudden, he has a revival right there on the dock. I don't know a word that's being said. It's all in Spanish. But I just feel something's going on. So all I can do is sit there and pray, God, help this guy. I felt that religious experience like I felt in Germany before. So this is sort of twice. Nobody said anything. I mean, I didn't hear voices. I didn't see anything. But just this feeling. That would have been probably 2000, 2001. 4 years before I was going to retire, I was working for Steve Bev at the time, and he had asked me to go, or told me to go to Athens and kind of be lead counsel in the northern part of the district. So I leave in my house in Cleveland. I usually go down Georgetown Road and hit the interstate and go to Athens. That big turn there in Georgetown Road, Collins used to have a gas station there on the corner. I think it's Harry's or something now.
Yeah.
But Collins, there used to be a bunch of Hispanic guys that would be out there every morning and being ready to get picked up.
Green Drive, they call it, yeah.
Well, I'm driving by there one day, and it just hit me as I see these guys. Those guys are Jesus. Those are the guys that we need to, and then go back to this Matthew 25, you do it to the least of these, you do it to me. Those are the guys. And so I'm thinking about this situation that I remember on this mission trip happening. I see these guys, and I'm thinking, what's God got to say? And so I don't know. That's coming up in my mind right now. What do we do with that?
Yeah, I don't know. And if you stop and said something, they'd think you's a nut.
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah.
Do you, I guess that's what soup kitchens are, to get them in there so you can have a word with them, I guess.
Yeah. So you asked me if God threw it at me. I don't know, and I don't know where that thought's going to go, if anywhere, but it's in my brain somewhere.
Well, it's obvious that you're still wanting to work for God. You're wanting to tell people that there's a God and to trust God. That's what you're wanting to do.
I hope more that's to tell them than to show them.
Either way, you're wanting to get it out there.
Yeah.
But do you think that people that are going through the divorces and temporary depression and down and out and stuff, is the key get busy or pray or pray and get busy or take medication, or what's the...
I think it's different for different folks. I think for me, and I mentioned going through the divorce, I had this alone time. Well, I started examining myself. And I think I needed that. I needed to look in the mirror and say, you're a screw up.
Like the 7 tattoos.
Yeah. But then I think it's also good to stay busy. I think you need to do both, maybe.
Well, and screwing up's not necessarily bad. It's just part of it. Just part of it.
Yeah.
So a person could be in jail for years and still be a good role model, couldn't he?
Yeah, and you got to be careful with that. I never will forget a guy that I'd put him in prison, bad with drugs. spent his time. I didn't think anything else about him, and I guess he finished his time and came out on probation or parole, and he contacted me and he said, "Hey, Mr. Carter, I just want you to know I've changed, and I found Jesus when I was in prison." And you've heard that story before.
Yeah, sure.
And I thought, well, good,
Yeah.
I'm proud of you, and I'll pray for you and get you on and that kind of thing. Well, he told me, he said, "Look, I really feel the desire or need to go back into that drug community and try to witness to those folks." And I said, "Well, do you think you're really ready for that?" And I'm no expert of that
sure.
kind of thing. Well, long story short, the guy ended up going back, and I'm convinced with the greatest of intentions of doing that, but he got brought back into doing drugs himself and ended up back in prison. And, I don't know, Tantra,
Maybe third time's a charm.
yeah. But I really felt like he had a right attitude.
Sure, you know that.
Yeah.
You probably pretty much tell, hey, this
Yeah.
guy's really sincere.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even mean he's a bad guy. He just couldn't make it again. He tried again. Maybe
And some people don't need to get back. Some people need to get away from that and go somewhere else.
Yeah, I guess it's like Alcoholic Anonymous. They say stay away from the ones that you don't go into a bar, right?
Yeah.
So what else is going on?
I don't know. Went to see Dr. Ernest Oler, Dr. Oler.
That's the dentist?
Yeah.
I don't know him very well.
Yeah, well, his son Ernie is now the president. Dr.
Yeah, I think I
Oler.
went to school with Ernie, maybe.
Yeah. Well, they had their 50th reunion, or what do you call it, being in business,
Yeah.
50 years of being in, and I went over there Friday and got to see Dr. Oler. He's 93 now.
93.
And he was always a good friend to me, and we got to talk, and I had my granddaughter with me, and he just had a ball with her. And so, the grandkids are pretty important.
Yeah. How many you got?
6.
Golly. What Christmases?
Oh, well, I had to take out a loan.
Yeah. And what do you get them? That's another thing, isn't it?
Well, and I probably do the easy way, but I talked to my son about this Christmas, and he said, "Dad," he said, "really, if you just want to give them some money, that's probably the best thing to do for them, because I don't know what they're all into stuff."
And their kids aren't like they used to be. You
Yeah.
get them roller skates or a wagon or something. How old are they? What's the oldest one?
Well, my oldest one is 25.
Yeah, they won't
And
mind.
he's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I've got one 16, 15. Guess the other one's probably about 10. Then I've got one that's just like 6. And a 6-year-old's easy.
Yeah.
I got him.
Yeah.
Let
12
goes, we're good.
The 12, 15-year-olds,
Oh,
man.
it's awful.
I don't know what. And if you got them what they want, it'd be a video game.
Oh, I couldn't afford
And
it.
they've got that.
How much those things cost now? It's $400 or $500.
Oh, I thought it was like $60.
I would hope. Yeah.
God, what they play that
I don't know.
tour or something,
Yeah, I have
or
no
so
idea.
I don't know what.
Yeah.
But hey, people my age play those things. I don't want to get on them because I would get addicted quick.
Yeah.
I don't have time.
Yeah, I'm retired, but I'll spend, and I didn't used to do this, but I'll spend at least 2 hours every morning reading.
What time do you get out?
Usually around 7:30 or 8.
So you're not a 4:30 or 5 o'clock guy.
No. I want to not get up till the sun's up, but I generally wake up before it. There's no. Why should I get
Yeah.
up? I don't
It'll
have
take me 15 minutes to get ready, right?
Yeah. But then if I got
What do you read in the morning? Is Bible or
mostly the Bible, and then some commentary. We're getting ready. I'm doing a class now in my Sunday school class. We're doing Revelations, and I'm having to do a lot of work on that because that is not one of my favorite books.
You know what you need to do?
What's that?
Write a book. I believe that's your calling.
Well, I've actually started to try to write a couple of books. It takes a lot of patience.
Well, and you think, well, what's it about?
Well,
Right.
here's what I was going to write, and I've actually got an outline. It has to do with my legal profession.
Uh-huh.
And there was a case, I won't go into the names of it, but it was a homicide case I was involved in. And there was just a whole lot of legal issues involved in that. Mm-hmm. But who wants to read that other than other lawyers?
I think that people are interested. Yeah, and lawyers don't have time. They want to, if they're going to read, they're going to read a legal precedence or something. Mm-hmm. But I think people are interested in just, I know from my experience in people that watch this show, the more regular a guy is, and the more regular the conversation, the more they watch it. And so I don't know why people don't write their own book, even though they haven't discovered Pluto or something. They could still write their book.
I've written some, and I go back and look at it, and I write dry. You know, I've written legal briefs, and I've written stuff. You know,
so it's going to sound like that.
It's going, and I got it. But who wants to read
let it
that?
be that.
You know,
Eddie, my friend Eddie Cartwright, he's got a bunch of stories, and he just wrote a book of his stories. And so that's one thing, just a book of his stories. It's not any really message or anything. I don't even think he's, out to sell it or anything, but it's still his book, and such a great thing for future generations.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, a couple of weeks ago I had a meeting with my rheumatologist. Mm-hmm. My rheumatologist I had just retired, and so I got a new one. He's my age, so he's not young, but he's...
Right over here?
Yeah. And so we got to talking, and he was telling me that his brother, I think it is a Presbyterian minister. Uh-huh. And he said his brother is going to publish just some of his sermons.
Huh.
I said, well, I got 8 years of sermons. I got them on thumb drive, so it wouldn't be that hard.
Well, it's just a matter of printing, and even if it's dry, maybe that's how you think. Yeah. Maybe that's still you.
Yeah, that's definitely. I'm pretty dry.
Let it be what it is. Was your mother or father dry?
Dad probably was.
More so than your mother?
Yeah.
What was she like?
She was real busy. You know the story in the Bible of the Mary and Martha? Mm-hmm. She was a Martha. She was always doing stuff.
Washing dishes, moving,
yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I didn't really get to know my dad that well until probably I was 15 or 16, and he started taking me to, and in the summer I'd work with him pouring concrete. Mm-hmm. And I just realized this guy's wasn't really smart, and building these huge buildings in Nashville, skyscrapers and that kind of stuff, and he's having to work hard for a living. And I just got to love my dad when I was probably about 15 or 16.
Did you use the jitterbug, or was he pouring with pumps? I mean, he was, in fact, in Nashville, he was renting the pumps and the...
Well, and he wasn't, but the company that we worked for, yeah.
Boy, those things are heavy.
Oh, yeah.
God, you get killed.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I like to got killed once. We were building what's now the water sewer treatment plant in Nashville, out on the Cumberland River. And we were putting the forms together and putting the steel in the forms for the columns. And we had a crane that would hold things in place when we was putting the forms in and getting them connected. And the headache ball fell.
Golly.
And we're just right up there, and I didn't know I could move so fast.
So, well, did it hit you?
Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah.
How long did your dad stay? Did he retire as a concrete finisher?
Dad died when he was 90. He probably worked till 70 or 75.
He smoked?
Smoked, ate everything you ought not eat, but I think working hard kept him healthy.
It seems to be the key.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is, but it seems to be it.
Yeah.
So he worked as foreman or pouring concrete to
He
them?
did, yeah. It was when I knew. I'm sure before I got out there, I'm sure he was not the foreman, but yeah.
What about your mother? She work outside the home?
When I got a little older, she started working, and she worked as a cook at the school cafeteria. And I guess so she could kind of be the hours from when I was
sure.
well. So yeah. You remember those? We used to get lunch at school, the good lunch, for a quarter.
My mother was a lunch lady. She was an ice cream lady for a while.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you imagine some kids going up and getting ice creams and others not being able to pay for it? I'd have given them all of it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I mean that's the way it was. You know.
Boy, those lunches, everybody liked the pizza days, didn't they? Did y'all have pizza day?
I don't remember that particular.
The square pizzas?
Probably did.
They had but that's what we always had here, and everybody liked the pizza day, and Haney's meat market has them.
Yeah.
So I went out there and bought a case of them. I thought, boy, I'm going to eat these. Let's like the school, and they're making them different. They just don't taste the same. I ended up I couldn't even eat them.
Yeah.
What do you eat like on Sunday night, like tonight?
Well, during football season, I'd be having me a pizza and watching a football game. But now that football season's over with,
Well, no, the Super Bowl's when?
next Sunday.
What time will it be? 6 or something?
I don't know.
Will you watch it?
I probably will.
Who you think will win? I don't even know who's in it. I don't even watch football, but
And neither one. I'm a Green Bay Packer guy, so my team's not in it. But if I had to bet, I'd probably bet on Kansas City. They've won 2 or 3 in a row.
2 I heard on
Yeah,
TV. I know Kendrick Lamar is going to be halftime. I like him. You ever seen him?
I've heard that. I've heard it, but no.
Well, it's I'm really big into music. I love music, and I like the videos because sometimes the song will mean something to you, but you watch the video and it'll have a whole different meaning, and you don't know which one. Some songs are more better with the video and some aren't, but this Kendrick Lamar, I believe is his name, he's got a video called the Campton Christmas Parade. And I looked it up because I kind of liked the song. Evidently, in Campton, California, the Christmas parade is a real big deal. And so the whole video is, and I'm guessing all of this because this is the way I see the video. That's the way I'm interpreting the video. Is maybe the Campton Christmas Parade is not what we would see as a Christmas parade. You know, Santa Claus and this and that. But they'll have the cheerleading squad come by, 2 nuts on bicycles, 2 workout guys, cars that are going up and down, like the people that are, doing those bouncing cars, And it's, to me, the song is showing all the diversity. And at the end of the song, he's got a guy standing there dressed up in a Jesus costume. In the background, it's got a box where you know the costume came from, and it's got a price tag on it, $40. So you don't know if the song is trying to cheapen Christmas or if the song's saying, no matter how poor we are, we still respect this Christmas for Jesus. So you don't know. It's a really good song. But anyway, he's going to be halftime on the Super Bowl. I'm curious if he'll have that song and if he'll be portraying some of that.
Well, you might appreciate where I'm going to go Friday night.
Where's that?
We're going to go down and hear Marty Stewart
Where's that?
somewhere in Chattanooga.
Marty Stewart. What is that?
He's a country.
The country music. The older guy.
Well, he's not that old. You know, he started out as a kid.
Well, wasn't he
working
with
for
Roy
Bill
Acuff and in that era?
Worked for Bill Monroe, but he was a child working for Bill Monroe and Lester Flatt. And
I never was big into his music for some reason. I'm more of a country western guy.
He's country, but maybe a little more bluegrass.
Yeah. I like all kinds of music. You like listening to any Baroque?
Yeah.
I love Baroque.
Yeah.
I like to read to Baroque.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I kind of got through law school. When I would go study, I had these long playing classical albums.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put one on, and I would study. And when that thing finished, I took a break, turn it over, and go again. That's how I got through law school.
Do you know they've done studies, and Baroque in the background will enhance your concentration and thinking and speed in whatever you're doing. Ain't that bizarre?
I don't doubt that. I mean, that what got me through.
I mean, like Handel and Vivaldi and.
Yeah.
So next Sunday night, where will you get the pizza? Will you order it or make it?
Probably order it.
Like from where?
I don't know.
Because everybody will be ordering it.
Yeah, well, maybe I won't then.
They got some pretty good pizzas at Publix that you can heat up.
Yeah, I may do that.
That way you don't have to
pay
$60. I bet a takeout pizza from Pizza Hut would be $60 now. What do you reckon?
I hope not.
Sometimes we get Zaxby's, and that way.
Yeah.
I'm really not a football guy, but what else you gonna watch, right?
Right. Yeah. I enjoy it. I don't know about me, but I refereed high school football for 15 years.
Where at?
Around this area.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I did it doing. I had 3 state championship games over those years.
So, do you wear the striped uniforms?
Yeah.
Well, who else did that? Was it Larry Sales?
Yeah. I worked out of the Chattanooga Association.
Okay.
But yeah, I know Larry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was acting different, wasn't he?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't know him that well, but yeah.
I think he went to my church. So you wore the striped uniform?
Yeah.
Blew the whistle?
Yeah.
Now, how in the world do you know how to do all that?
Well, I played high school football for one thing.
What position?
I was an offensive center. Snapped the ball on offensive line. I played defensive end on defense.
Tom Johnson.
Yeah, I remember.
So you were.
But I ain't nowhere near it. No.
But that's what you position you played.
Yeah. And anyway, a friend of mine suggested I get into it. This was right when I got divorced. And, you're trying to do everything, just do stuff.
Yeah.
And so I started in 2000 and refereed to 2006. I retired from everything in 2016. But,
Wonder what's significant about then?
I don't know. I just remember the last year or so refereeing, Friday nights, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. But Saturday morning, I got where I was so blame sore.
I bet that's a lot more. I bet that's harder than people realize.
Well, I work the umpire position, and the umpire position is the guy that's in there with the linebacker, so everything's coming at me. And so my main focus was the offensive line and things going. But when some big running back is coming at you, my main focus was get the heck out of the way.
Yeah.
And every now and then I didn't. Yeah.
What, do you ever get in the way? Like, I bet that could irritate somebody if you were in the way, right?
Yeah. Well, it irritate me, yeah. And the worst part would be receivers would try to come by and rub their defensive guy off on you, use you as a pick. And so yeah,
That's a lot of thinking, isn't it?
yeah.
I mean, that's planning.
The guys that I did it for 15 years, and the guys that I worked with for most of the time, most of the 13, we worked the same group together for about 13 years. And so we were just really good friends.
Yeah.
And so you work with somebody enough, you know what they're going to do.
Yeah.
It's another team
Yeah.
out there, really. And so
So it's almost like a third team out there keeping it.
there's a book written called that, by the way.
Oh, is there
Yeah.
third team?
Yeah. Yeah, we had and I learned some good lessons from there. I'll never forget, we had one of our supervisors was an NFL umpire, and preseason they would do clinics and stuff, and I never will forget, he was trying to get a point to us that, hey, these coaches and stuff, their livelihoods on the line. He said, you got to give them a little grace and that kind of stuff. And one of the old timers at the time said, well, I just like to get on to them, and this NFL ref looked at him and he said, well, I guess that's one way of looking at it. And when he made the point, this is not what you want to do.
Yeah.
You want to give these guys grace, realizing they're
That's a job they've
yeah,
got.
yeah. And so,
So I never thought of it that way.
yeah.
Because some of them just want to get out there and try to be them against the coaches, I guess.
Yeah.
And you got to wonder if there's any bias, right?
And I know the ones that we worked with didn't. You never did the same school twice in the same year because we'd rotate around. We worked
Yeah.
everything from Monteagle to Cleveland.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and
Did you get paid much for that?
No, I think we got something like $75 for a Friday night.
Who pays that?
The TSSAA, which is the Tennessee Secondary School
So
Association.
the schools pay into that and they divvy the money
Yeah.
out? That's a whole nother world. See, I didn't even think nothing about that. I thought they just called Bob and he went over there and got a whistle.
No, he had to go to training, and the guy that was my trainer was an ACC official. This guy was sharp. Yeah,
Knew all the rules and
Yeah.
all that other stuff.
yeah. And we had another
Did you
guy.
ever have to go out on the field and say, hey,
Well, I was not the guy that wears the white hat is the one that he's the head official.
So
he
he
does all that. We're the rest of us are watching
Yeah.
our area
Yeah.
and doing our thing. But it was
You've
good.
had an interesting life, you know it?
Yeah, I have. I've been very, very blessed and very lucky. And everybody I think everybody I've ever dealt with, worked with, are just good people.
It's hard. It's easy to work with good people
Yeah,
and vice versa.
yeah.
Anything else?
I think not.
Well, if
Did we do all right?
we do good, Glenn? Hey, I appreciate you coming.
Oh
Wayne.
man,
George McCoy thinks you hung them up.